Good evening and welcome to BATV News. I'm Andrew Laidley. Red Stripe has invested close to $18 million in its new production line and liquefied natural gas plant. The plant was officially commissioned today as part of the Beer Giants' Imagine That campaign. Javon Keys reports.
Red Stripe says its new production line has the capacity to produce 40,000 bottles per hour and 26,000 cases of beer per day exclusively for its growing global markets. It says the new line now means the brewery can produce up to 1 million bottles of beer per day. The brewery's new production line, called Line 8, comes as the company started using liquefied natural gas, LNG, to power its operations. The LNG project is the result of a partnership between Red Stripe and US-based supplier New Fortress Energy. LNG Senior Project Manager at Red Stripe, Neil Grant, says converting the plant will make it far more self-sufficient.
First of all, LNG translates to a 50% increase in electrical power output. So we're moving the power plant from 2.1 megawatts on propane to 3.1 megawatts on natural gas. Converting the power plant from propane to natural gas provides us a 30% increase in steam output too as well, from 1.4 tons per hour to 1.7 tons per hour. The effect of this increase has moved Red Stripe from 90% self-sufficiency of generating our own electrical power to 96%.
Mr. Grant says the upgrade is expected to help the company save $43 million in 2018 and $75 million in 2019. He adds that it will also help them to play their part in protecting the environment. The Beer Giant is now the first commercial company in Jamaica to be fully LNG powered.
By using natural gas, the CHP will save annually approximately 6,000 tons of greenhouse gases emitted to the atmosphere. The impact of this GHG saving, though small, in the larger environmental agenda has a big impact on air quality and will benefit our nation in the future. This saving is equivalent of removing 1,285 average passenger cars from the road for 1 year.
Meanwhile, Managing Director at Red Stripe, Ricardo Nuncio, says the two projects are helping the company's overall output and its goal to grow brand Jamaica.
These two innovations, we feel very proud of them because they truly represent our commitment, the commitment of Heineken, the commitment of every single employee that comes every day to this brewery for Jamaica. This sends a clear signal that we want to grow brand Jamaica. We want to promote economic growth. We believe in the Economic Growth Council, and we believe in that plan. We are here to promote that employment and that growth.
For BATV News, I'm Javon Keys.
The Jamaica Broilers Group says its $2 million investment in a third pellet mill at its feed mill in Freetown, St. Catherine, will increase its production capacity to 350,000 tons of animal feed per year. The company says the new facility is the largest feed mill in the Caribbean. Jason Muyong reports.
President and CEO of Jamaica Broilers Group, Christopher Levy, says growth in the local poultry and egg industries begins with good quality animal feed. He says that's exactly what a high-pro pellet mill will produce. The mill will convert vegetable protein into digestible protein so farmers can rear healthy animals.
What happens is this is where raw vegetable protein is converted into digestible protein. And a feed mill of this size is a real indicator of what's happening in the agricultural sector as it relates to animals. It's exciting and it's not to be taken for granted. It's agriculture, you have up years, down years, good times, bad times. But on the whole, it's very, very exciting what's happening in the animal sector. Yes, there are challenges with the coke or the this or the that. We have to work those through.
Mr. Levy says the dairy industry is also growing, with a conversation around breeds and a better production. He argues that this shows why the agricultural sector cannot be taken for granted, as farmers are the backbone of the country, providing more jobs than any other sector.
We see it growing, we see structure coming back to it, we see the development in the industry, consumption happening, the conversation around breeds and better production is there. But again, it shows the direction of the country and what's happening in the agricultural sector, not to be taken for granted. Farmers and agriculture is the backbone of this country. More employment and more economy happens around agriculture than any other sector.
According to Mr. Levy, Jamaica Brawlers Group is now a multi-billion-dollar operation in 3 countries, but he points out that the company's core business remains in Jamaica. He says the company's operation on the island is now self-sufficient compared to when they just started the business.
Our growth in the poultry industry in the country is leading us to where we're basically self-sufficient in poultry. We've seen growth in the pork industry. Again, basically self-sufficient in pork. Egg. Basically, what has happened in egg is nothing short of a miracle. We're almost at, Con? We're about almost 2 eggs a week per person. That's a doubling of the consumption of eggs and the production in the country.
Over the past 5 years, sales of high-pro chicks and broiler feeds have increased about 20%, with layer feed growing by 10%. Currently, high-pro has about 60% market share of all feeds sold in Jamaica. For BATV News, I'm Jason Muyong.
Senior trader at JMMB, Greg Lindo, says investors should do their research before putting their money in any organization. The senior trader's advice comes a few weeks after an uptick in the number of local companies going public. Here's more.
Know what you're putting your money into. Investors to carry out research on the companies they intend to invest in.
As with all investments, IPOs should be carefully considered by the investors. There are 2 main areas I like to look at when assessing IPOs. The first one being the fundamentals of the company. What does the company do? What's the prospect for growth? Who's on the board? Who comprises the management team? On the other hand, you also have the finances of the company. What has the company's performance been? Usually with IPOs, you're required to provide a 5-year financial history, except in cases of startups. But where financial history is not available in the case of a startup, you may have projections. What do these projections look like? That is really what's going to lead to a valuation of the company, which is what you're essentially purchasing into. And I think, as Warren Buffett would say, never buy into something that you do not understand.
So are investors getting value for money? Mr. Linder says based on his analysis, the IPOs now in the market are in fact undervalued and can be considered fair value for investors.
Our analysts have assessed, I think, 3 of the IPOs that have come so far. We've had buy ratings on Wisynco and VM Wealth, as we perceive the IPO price on these securities is actually below where we see their fair value. In the case of GWest, we also have a market weight opinion, which pretty much says, the company is fairly IPO price.
He says this Christmas season has started on a high, with at least 3 companies making IPO announcements over a 2-week period. But things should slow down on the stock exchange as Christmas draws closer.
Well, the season has already started with a flurry of IPO activity. As we move closer towards the holiday season, we expect market activity to generally taper off. With the expectation for additional IPOs, I'm sure investors will pay keen attention to what's happening in the market.
For BATV News, I'm Andrew Laidley.
Still to come, tax credit as compensation. One researcher thinks that may be a way to finance the care economy. The details after the break. Welcome back and thanks for staying with us. Tax credits. That's what the research supervisor at the Caribbean Policy Research Institute, Capri, is recommending the government use to compensate the care economy. She says if citizens are better cared for, the whole country is better off socially and economically. Anthony Morgan tells us more.
Capri's research supervisor Dr. Diana Thorburn agrees that there are fiscal implications for compensating unpaid care work.
In the OECD countries, in Scandinavian countries, you can claim a tax credit for the number of dependents in your household. In Canada, you can get, I think it's about 2,100 Canadian dollars offset off your taxes for each dependent in your household. That's a child under 18, an elderly person over 65, a disabled person, a sick person, a person of any age who is over 18 who is unable to work, up to about 6,000 Canadian dollars a year. So you pay that much less in your taxes. In the US, there's similar tax policies that offset unpaid care work.
But if more people, especially women, begin participating in the labor market, who will run the care economy?
This is where the state comes in, and this is where the data come in. To suggest at this point that Jamaica is going to provide free childcare, Jamaica in its economic situation, many people would think that's hardly likely. And that's certainly not the first recommendation or the only recommendation of what governments can do. However, there are developing countries where the state has found ways to pay for childcare. In the Philippines, just as we use our Gaming and Lotteries Commission tax for Chase, in the Philippines they use it to provide childcare for young children.
Meanwhile, Dr. Thorburn says for developing states like Jamaica, the solution would be to use tax credits.
Commonly, especially for businesses, I think the most recent tax policy that had a tax credit was for businesses that had employed over a certain number of people in that given year. So
the government's going to say we can't give everybody a tax credit.
No, but if we recognize that healthy children, well cared for children, children who are not running up and down on the street and becoming the criminals that are costing us in terms of security in 10 years' time, if they are better cared for, the whole country is better off, not just socially, but also economically.
For BATV News, I'm Anthony Morgan.
The Consumer Affairs Commission, CAC, is reminding shoppers to guard against cyber scams as they make their online purchases during the Christmas season. Chief Executive Officer of the CAC, Dulcie Allen, says the impulsive spending during the Yuletide period makes persons particularly vulnerable to these scams. She notes that these steps to prevent scamming starts and ends with the buyer's ability to decipher real from dangerous and dubious links. She says consumers must first confirm the legitimacy of the website they're buying from to ensure that it's the official site for the merchant. As such, she's advising persons not to navigate to sites by clicking links in emails or from advertisements. Mrs. Allen also points out that the secured sites will display a green locked padlock symbol in the browser window. They will also have an address that begins with HTTPS instead of the usual HTTP. The CAC CEO is further advising persons to install protective software and firewalls if they plan to do excessive buying online. She says shoppers should also be on guard and be ready to hide their PIN numbers, credit card, and banking information. Starting March 2018, Spirit Airlines will be offering additional flights to Montego Bay from the Baltimore-Washington International Airport in Maryland, USA. Tourism Minister Ed Bartlett says Spirit's increased flights is yet another indication of the heightening demand for Jamaica. He says this augurs very well for Jamaica's tourism growth strategy. Montego Bay will be the second international route for Spirit Airlines from the Baltimore-Washington International Airport. The carrier only started service to Cancun, Mexico last month. Currently, the airline operates non-stop flights between its Fort Lauderdale, Florida hub and Montego Bay and Kingston. Spirit is an American low-cost carrier headquartered in Florida and operates scheduled flights throughout the United States and in the Caribbean, Mexico, Latin America, and South America. Spirit Airlines' additional flights comes just after major U.S. airline Southwest increased its flight itinerary to include 2 daily non-stop flight service between Fort Lauderdale and Montego Bay. This added another 52,000 new seats in and out of Jamaica while increasing connectivity to other U.S. cities. Meanwhile, Montego Bay will also see several new non-stop flights from destinations such as Vancouver, Canada, Munich, Germany, Warsaw, Poland, Madrid, Spain, and elsewhere. Some of these have already started. Come Thursday, Jamaica will begin exporting 1 container of bananas per week to Trinidad. This regular export is now possible because of a Government of Jamaica European Union initiative to expand banana production in traditional banana-dependent areas locally. The initiative was funded by a grant of 4.73 million euros in 2013. Since then, banana production has steadily increased from over 33,000 tons to over 58,000 tons in 2016. Meanwhile, banana exports increased from 78 tons in 2013 to 411 tons in 2016, earning some 47.7 million Jamaican dollars. In the meantime, productivity within the banana industry also went up some 7.5%, moving from 15 tons per hectare to 18,000 tons. Now stay with us. Regional and international stories are next. Welcome back. It's time now for regional and international news. Investigators in the Bahamas are probing theft allegations at the island's water and sewage company. Here's more.
Chairman of the Water and Sewerage Corporation, Adrian Gibson, says police are now investigating theft and other sensitive matters related to the water company. Gibson says their involvement came at his behest.
I've also written to the police, and the police also involved in reviewing a few matters at the corporation. I won't get into details, but I can tell you that the police have been invited to review a few things.
Gibson says the police involvement is a relatively new development, coming after consultation with Minister of Works Desmond Bannister.
This would have been late last week. A letter was issued by myself upon consultation with Minister Bannister, and I know that I think it would have been about Thursday or so of last week.
The corporation currently has 2 investigations underway, an Ernst & Young forensic audit and an internal audit. Gibson says he expects the results of those investigations to be in his hands in short order.
The forensic investigation or the forensic audit, that is expected in short course. I know that they have indicated that they are preparing the report. And with respect to the Internal Control and Compliance Division, I expect that elements of their investigation would be completed this week.
Gibson says his aim is to be completely transparent, and once that audit is complete, it's going to be tabled in Parliament.
I certainly will table the forensic audit in the House of Assembly. The internal report, I anticipate that it would be made public upon consultation, of course, with Minister Bannister. But I believe in transparency. I believe in with respect to the corporation, bringing things into perspective, accountability, and you will see that.
According to Gibson, 5 employees were placed on leave. 3 have since returned. Reporting for our news, I'm Jared Higgs.
Charlotte street vendors in Trinidad protested outside City Hall yesterday, demanding more selling days on the street. More from CNews Live.
The vendors are pleading to the Port of Spain Mayor Joel Martinez to rescind this decision. Last Friday, during the sitting of the House of Representatives, Minister of Planning and Development Camille Robinson-Regis, who spoke on behalf of the Minister of Local Government, said the decision taken by the Port of Spain Corporation to have vending on certain days was taken to ensure the safety of business owners, pedestrians and the motoring traffic, as well as the vendors themselves. Sherilyn Lewis, C News.
Pensioners in Argentina have clashed with police over reforms which they say would have seen their pensions cut. In an effort to reduce the budget deficit, the Argentinian Congress was debating measures which change how the payments are calculated.
A battle rages outside of Argentina's Congress as lawmakers debate a pension reform that has unions and retirees up in arms. Investors say it will cut payments, taking money from the poor and the old.
Basically, this reform is hurting the elders, those who are working now and who will have to keep on working.
I'm an 80-year-old retiree, and I'm here to demonstrate against the law that Macri's government wants to pass, because I think it's totally harmful to all of pensioners and retirees.
The reform proposed by Mauricio Macri's conservative government would change the way benefits are calculated, adjusting them every quarter based on inflation, rather than the current adjustments linked to wage increases and tax revenue. The current system keeps benefits in line with past levels of inflation, while the proposed plan would align them with current levels, which are expected to drop. Macri's government says the changes are needed to slash the country's soaring deficit.
Argentina is coming out of 25 years of decline provoked by Perón, and these people have just realized they're losing their privileges.
Protesters aren't going to give in easily. The sound of banging pots and pans carried on into the night on Monday, a symbolic gesture in Argentina, used during riots that forced presidents from office in 2001 during the country's worst economic crisis.
Talking Stocks is after the break. Stay with us. Time now for Talking Stocks. 41 stocks traded today, of which 20 had declined and 8 traded firm. The main JC index advanced by 575 points to close at 278,000 points. The junior index declined by 3 points to close at 2,700 points. Over 5 million units traded, valued at more than 90 the Jamaican dollar market. And on the US dollar market, over 1 million units traded, valued at more than 247,000 US dollars. Caribbean Cream, with over 2 million units changing hands, accounted for 34% of the market volume. Lasco Distributors was second with over 789,000 units traded. Us, with over 783,000 units, accounted for 13, crossing the floor. Siboney Group was the top advancer, up by less than a cent to close at 41 cents. By Derrimont Trading Company, up 91 cents to close at 7 cents. And Mayberry Investments, up 59 cents to close at $6. The main decline Press losing 74 cents to close at $14, followed by Lasco Distributors down 18 cents to close at $3.87. And Caribbean Cream down 20 cents to close at $4.80. And that's all the news we have for this evening. But before we go, a recap of our top story. Red close to $18 million in its new production line and liquefied natural gas plant. The plant was officially commissioned today as a part of the Beer Giants Imagine That campaign. Thanks for watching. For more content, visit our website at batvja.com. I'm Andrew Laidley. Pleasant viewing.